Once you create a form, it's able to gather information from the user, and then to process that information is usually handled by a script on the server. And this class does not cover server-side programming. We only do the front end or client-side programming. So we won't cover that in this class, but I do want to show you how to submit a form. And there's a couple of things that we need to do. So in the opening form tag, we're going to add two attributes. And the first one is the action attribute, and this identifies the URL of the script that will handle the form and the data that is sent to the form. And for this, I have created a server-side file called submitapplication.php and published it. And so it's available. Notice that this action is a complete URL, including the protocol. The second thing that we need in the opening form tag is an attribute for the method. And there are a couple of methods. There's the get method and the post method. The get method will send all of the form data through the URL. And there are particular times when that's beneficial. For example, when you want to keep track of information on the page so you could return to that same URL with exactly the same values in it. But for our purposes, we're going to be sending data that we don't want to expose in the URL, specifically a password. You wouldn't ever want to use a get method if you're passing a password because it's visible in the URL, and so that exposes that. So we're going to use the other method, which is the post method. So now we've identified what script is going to be handling the form, where to submit it to, and which method that we're going to use, the post method. Now the next thing that we need is we need a submit button. This is another input element. I'm going to put it down here at the bottom of the form, and it is just an input element, but this time the type is submit. And that's the type of it. I'm going to give it a name so I can associate the variable with it, and I'm just going to call it submit. And now if I go back and refresh this page, I get that submit button. And if I click it, the form will actually, all the data will be gathered and sent to that URL that was listed in the action. And here, notice that all that this does is it simply lists all the variables that have been sent, right? Those are the variable names and their values. Now notice there was no value, and that's because we submitted it with no value in there. How about if I put a value in there? So for name, put John Phillips, and for the password, put in the password and click submit. And now notice that the value for name variable is John Phillips. The value for the password is that. Remember that the password was covered up in the form, but once it's sent to the server, it's going to the server just as plain text. So here's all this form does, or all this server-side code does, is it simply displays all the variables and values that were sent with the form. And that's how you submit a form